She couldn't walk, then a mysterious mountain man changed her life forever. Emily sat by the window, staring at the gray sky that hung low over her small town. Outside, children ran freely through puddles, laughing as the rain dripped from the rooftops, while neighbors hurried past, clutching umbrellas. She envied them, envied the simple joy of moving through the world without pain or struggle. It had been over a year since she last walked without assistance, and every day felt like a battle against her own body. She shifted slightly in her wheelchair, wincing as a sharp ache shot through her legs. Doctors called it a complex neurological disorder, but for Emily, it was simply a life stolen. She remembered the days when she could walk to the local market, climb the hill near her home, or dance in her room just for fun. Now even the simplest tasks felt monumental. Getting dressed, cooking a meal, or stepping outside required planning, energy, and often tears. Emily's apartment was small but cozy. Books lined the shelves, photographs of family and friends adorned the walls, and soft sunlight fell across the worn carpet. Yet despite the warmth of her home, a heavy cloud of loneliness hung over her. Friends had stopped visiting regularly. They didn't know what to say, and Emily often felt like a burden. Her family tried their best, calling and checking in daily, but there was only so much they could do. She often found herself thinking about the life she used to have, and the life she could never fully reclaim. Mornings were the hardest. Waking up and realizing that her legs wouldn't support her, that she needed help to get to the bathroom, to move to her chair, to navigate the world. These were humiliations she hadn't prepared for. She tried to keep her spirits up, reading inspiring stories online, listening to podcasts, and writing in her journal. But the ache of limitation never truly left her. One particular morning, Emily felt a strange mix of restlessness and despair. The sky outside was clearing, the clouds parting to reveal a pale sun. She wanted to feel the warmth on her skin, to taste freedom, even for just a few minutes. With careful planning, she wheeled herself to the small balcony of her apartment. The city below hummed with life, people moving, cars honking, birds flitting from tree to tree, and Emily felt a pang of longing so deep it made her chest ache. Her thoughts wandered to the times before her illness. She remembered hiking with her friends in the nearby hills, the wind whipping through her hair, the thrill of reaching the top and looking out at the endless expanse of green forests and rivers. She remembered the laughter, the sore muscles from climbing, the sense of being alive and connected to something bigger than herself. Those memories felt like they belonged to another person, another life, yet they were hers, etched into her soul. The year she had spent mostly inside had taught her patience, resilience, and the small joys of life she once overlooked. She had learned to savor a cup of tea, the smell of rain on the pavement, the gentle warmth of sunlight on her hands. Yet these small pleasures could not fill the emptiness she felt from being trapped in a body that refused to cooperate. Emily's days had become predictable, each one blending into the next. She would wake up, move from bed to wheelchair with careful effort, eat breakfast, and then spend hours reading or working on her laptop. Occasionally, she would attend therapy sessions, but even those were exhausting. Her body had lost so much strength that even the exercises meant to help her often left her frustrated and sore. She wanted more than slow recovery. She wanted to feel like herself again. Despite her struggle, Emily had not given up hope entirely. Somewhere deep inside, a small spark of determination remained. She told herself that there had to be a way to regain her mobility, to reclaim the independence she had lost. Some nights she would lie awake, imagining herself standing, walking, even running. She visualized the muscles in her legs growing stronger, her balance returning, her body responding to her will. It was a comforting thought, even if it seemed impossible. One afternoon, feeling particularly restless, Emily decided to venture outside. Her wheelchair rolled along the cracked pavement as she made her way to a nearby park. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, and for a brief moment she felt a flicker of peace. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing through the trees, and an elderly couple walked hand in hand along the path. Emily watched them, a mixture of envy and longing in her heart. She found a quiet bench under a large oak tree and sat there for hours, watching the world move without her. People passed by, some glancing at her with curiosity or pity, others not noticing at all. Emily did not mind the stares, she was used to them. Instead, she focused on the life around her, the wind rustling the leaves, a bird hopping along the path, the sunlight filtering through the branches. It was a world she could see but not fully participate in, and yet there was beauty in that small connection. As the days passed, Emily began to spend more time outside, seeking the park as a place of solace. She spoke to strangers occasionally, learning their stories, sharing bits of her own. Though she remained physically limited, these small interactions reminded her that life continued, that connection was still possible, even from a wheelchair. She began to notice small changes within herself, a flicker of confidence when a stranger smiled at her, a sense of calm when the wind brushed her face. Her family watched with concern. They encouraged her to rest, to focus on her health, but they also understood that Emily needed this small taste of freedom. They saw her smile more often, heard her laugh again, and recognized the spark returning to her eyes. Though she could not walk, she was no longer entirely trapped by despair. Emily's mind was full of questions. Could she ever walk again? Was there hope beyond the boundaries of her illness? She read stories of people who had overcome similar struggles, tales of determination, unconventional therapies, and unexpected recoveries. Each story was a reminder that miracles were possible, even when the odds seemed stacked against her. She wanted to be one of those stories, to write her own chapter of triumph and resilience. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emily felt a surge of determination. She promised herself that she would not remain a prisoner of her illness. She would find a way to regain her strength, to reclaim her independence, no matter how long it took. The path ahead was uncertain, and fear lingered in the corners of her mind. But for the first time in months, Emily felt a glimmer of hope that she had thought lost forever. She wheeled herself back to her apartment, her heart heavy but her spirit stirring. The journey would be long, and setbacks were inevitable, but Emily knew that the first step was believing in herself. She spent the night journaling her thoughts, setting small goals for herself, and visualizing the life she wanted to live. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream of walking again, of feeling the wind on her face, of embracing life fully. Emily did not yet know how her life would change, nor did she know that a chance encounter with a mysterious stranger in the mountains would soon alter her destiny. But she felt a quiet determination growing within her, a sense that perhaps, just perhaps, the world still held possibilities she had yet to discover. That night she fell asleep with a new kind of hope, a fragile, delicate hope, but a hope nonetheless, ready to guide her toward an unknown future filled with courage, challenge, and transformation. Emily woke up early one morning, a strange mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling inside her. For weeks, she had been dreaming of exploring the forest that lay just beyond the edge of her town. It was a place she had loved before her illness, a place where the air was fresh and crisp, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets to anyone willing to listen. Today, she decided, she would go there again despite her limitations. She packed a small bag with essentials, a water bottle, a snack, her journal, and a few items to make herself comfortable. She carefully maneuvered her wheelchair out of the apartment, taking each turn slowly as the morning sun began to warm the streets. People passed by, some glancing at her with curiosity, others giving her polite smiles. She no longer felt embarrassed by the stares. Instead, she felt determined. Today was about her, not anyone else. The path to the forest was longer than she remembered. Her arms ached as she pushed herself along the cracked pavement and uneven dirt paths. Every so often, she stopped, resting and looking around. The world seemed alive in ways she had forgotten. A squirrel darted across the path, birds chirped in the trees, and the gentle rustle of leaves carried a soothing rhythm. Emily felt a small sense of peace. It had been so long since she had felt truly connected to the world outside her apartment. Finally, she reached the forest. The air here smelled different, cleaner, sweeter, with the scent of pine and damp soil. Sunlight filtered through the branches, creating patches of light that danced on the forest floor. Emily wheeled herself along a narrow trail, marveling at the beauty around her. She felt a freedom she hadn't felt in months, as though the trees themselves were welcoming her back. After a while, she noticed a small figure moving in the distance. At first, she thought it was a hiker, but the figure seemed different. Older, rugged, with long hair and a beard, dressed in worn clothes that blended almost completely with the surroundings. He moved gracefully as if he belonged to the forest itself. Emily hesitated for a moment. She had never seen anyone like him. Something about his presence made her curious, even cautious. "Hello," she called softly, unsure if he could hear her. The man turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers. There was a calmness in his gaze, a quiet strength that made Emily feel both nervous and strangely safe. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he studied her for a moment, as if trying to understand her story without words. "You're far from the road," he said finally, his voice deep and steady. "Not many people come here alone." Emily smiled weakly. I just needed to get out to feel the air, the forest. It's been a long time since I could move freely." He nodded as though he understood without needing further explanation. "I know what it's like to feel trapped," he said. "Sometimes the world seems too big and our bodies too small, but the forest has a way of teaching patience and sometimes strength." Emily felt a flicker of hope. There was something about him, something unspoken, that made her believe he could understand her struggles. She found herself wanting to know more about this mysterious man, this figure who seemed to exist between the world of humans and nature. Over the next few weeks, Emily returned to the forest regularly. Each time she would see him, sometimes close, sometimes distant, but always observing, always patient. He never rushed her, never judged her. He simply existed, a silent guide who seemed to know that healing could not be forced. One day, he approached her as she rested on a fallen log. "You have been coming here often," he said. "I can see that you want more than to sit and watch the world. You want to move through it again." Emily's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how, I don't know if I can," he smiled gently. "Then we start small, one step at a time, not just with your legs, but with your mind. Healing begins with belief, and belief begins with trust in yourself and in the process." He introduced her to simple exercises, adapted to her abilities. At first, they were just stretches, movements that seemed almost too easy to matter. But Emily noticed subtle changes. Her muscles grew warmer, her legs more responsive, her balance slightly stronger. Each small victory was a thrill, a reminder that her body could respond if given patience and care. The man taught her about breathing, about focusing her mind, about connecting to the world around her. He showed her how to use the uneven ground of the forest as a natural form of therapy, challenging her balance gently, without fear. He told stories of people he had known who had overcome great obstacles, but he always emphasized that progress came slowly, with respect for the body and its limits. Emily felt a mix of frustration and excitement. Some days her legs refused to cooperate, sending sharp reminders of her weakness. Other days she could stand for a few seconds without support, a triumph that made her heart race with joy. Through it all, the mountain man was patient, encouraging, never pushing too hard, but always guiding her forward. As the weeks turned into months, Emily noticed changes beyond the physical. Her confidence grew, her mind became sharper, and her heart felt lighter. She was no longer just a spectator of life. She was an active participant, learning to navigate the world again in ways she had forgotten. The forest became her classroom, the mountain man her teacher, and each day a lesson in resilience and patience. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging exercise, Emily sat on a moss-covered rock, breathing heavily but smiling. "I can feel it," she said. "I feel like I'm getting stronger, like I can maybe even walk again someday." The mountain man nodded. "Yes. But remember, strength is not only in your legs. It is in your mind, your heart, your determination. You have the power to heal, Emily. You just need to trust yourself and the world around you." Emily looked around the forest, the sunlight casting golden beams through the trees. She felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the man who guided her, but for the world itself, which seemed to open up to her in ways she had never noticed. Birds sang songs she had never heard, the wind whispered encouragement, and even the rough path beneath her wheels seemed less intimidating. Over time, their routine became a rhythm, a dance of trust and effort. Emily began to experiment with standing for longer periods, leaning on branches, balancing on uneven terrain, and taking small steps with the man supporting her. Each attempt brought new challenges, but also new victories. She celebrated every inch of progress, every second she could stand without falling. The mountain man rarely shared personal details. He spoke of the forest, of healing, of resilience, but never of himself. This mystery intrigued Emily. She wondered about his past, his life, and how he had come to live in such isolation. Yet she realized that it did not matter. What mattered was the guidance he offered, the encouragement, and the faith he instilled in her own abilities. One day, while they rested by a small creek, Emily asked, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." He smiled, looking at the rippling water. "Because I have walked my own path of struggle. I have learned that when we help others rise, we rise ourselves." Healing is not a solitary journey. It is shared, like a river flowing through many hands, touching many lives. Emily felt a lump in her throat. She realized that she had been so focused on her own struggles that she had forgotten the power of connection, the strength that came from trusting someone else to guide you without judgment. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging, of being understood in a way that words alone could not express. The transformation was slow but undeniable. Emily could now stand for several minutes at a time, taking cautious steps with the man supporting her. She practiced every day, learning to trust her body again, to listen to its signals, and to push gently beyond her fears. She began to imagine a future where walking was no longer a dream but a reality. Each visit to the forest became an adventure, a test of courage and perseverance. Emily discovered muscles she had forgotten, strength she had doubted, and a spirit that refused to surrender. The man remained a silent guide, encouraging, watching, and celebrating her victories without fanfare. Through his guidance, Emily learned that the journey itself was as important as the destination, and that patience, faith, and determination were the keys to overcoming even the deepest struggles. By the end of the season, Emily was no longer the same person who had first wheeled herself into the forest. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more hopeful. Her legs still required support, her balance was not perfect, but the spark of possibility burned brighter than ever. She could feel it in every step, every breath, every movement she made, and she knew, deep in her heart, that this journey had only just begun. The mysterious mountain man had shown her a path, but it was Emily herself who would walk it, step by step, into a future she had once thought impossible. Emily woke up that morning with a strange feeling of anticipation. The sun had just begun to peek through her window, painting her room with soft, golden light. She stretched her arms, feeling muscles that had grown stronger over the past months. There was still weakness in her legs, but a new determination surged through her. Today, she decided she would challenge herself further. She packed a small bag with essentials and carefully wheeled herself to the forest. The path was familiar now, yet every journey felt new. The scent of pine and earth greeted her as she approached the trees, and sunlight danced through the branches, guiding her way. She spotted the mountain man waiting by a large oak, his silhouette calm and steady, blending almost perfectly with the forest around him. "Good morning," he said simply, his eyes warm. "You look ready." Emily nodded, swallowing the nervousness in her throat. "I want to try something harder today. I want to stand longer and maybe even take a few steps without help." The man smiled. "Then we take it slowly. But remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move forward despite it." They began with stretches and warm-up exercises, just as they always had. Emily felt her muscles wake, the blood flowing to places that had long been dormant. Each movement was careful, deliberate, guided by the man's calm instructions. He never rushed her. Instead, he let her body adjust at its own pace. Finally, it was time. The man helped Emily to a standing position, supporting her under her arms. The first seconds were wobbly and uncertain. Her legs shook, her heart pounded, and a fear she had carried for over a year whispered that she could not do it. But she drew a deep breath, focused on the forest around her, and remembered his words. Step by step, Emily shifted her weight from one leg to the other. She gritted her teeth, refusing to look at the ground in fear. Instead, she focused on the tall trees, the sunlight, and the promise of movement that her body was slowly learning to trust again. A small smile crept across her face as she realized she was standing fully on her own without collapsing. The mountain man nodded approvingly. "Good, very good. Now a few steps." Emily took a cautious step forward, her body trembling with effort. Another step followed, and then another. Her legs were weak, but her spirit was strong. She could hear the rustle of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and the rhythm of her own heartbeat as she moved forward. For the first time in over a year, she was not bound by her wheelchair. She was walking. Tears filled her eyes, not of pain, but of joy and relief. Every step was a triumph, every movement a victory over doubt and fear. The mountain man stayed close, supporting her only when necessary, allowing her to feel the freedom that came with each stride. Emily's laughter echoed through the trees, a sound she had missed more than she realized. As days turned into weeks, Emily's confidence grew. She began to walk longer distances, slowly reducing her reliance on support. The forest became her training ground, each uneven path and rocky incline a lesson in balance and perseverance. She learned to trust her body, to listen to its signals, and to celebrate even the smallest victories. But it was not just her body that changed. Emily's mind and heart transformed alongside her physical progress. She felt lighter, more present, and more connected to the world around her. The despair that had once clouded her days was replaced with hope and determination. She began to notice details she had overlooked, the way sunlight filtered through leaves, the scent of wildflowers, the gentle movement of animals in the underbrush. Each day became an adventure, a celebration of life regained. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging climb up a steep incline, Emily paused to catch her breath. Her legs were sore, but the sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. "I can't believe this," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I would get this far." The mountain man placed a hand on her shoulder. "You believed in yourself enough to take the first step. Everything else followed. Your body was always capable. It was your fear that needed guidance." Emily realized that he was right. The struggle had never been about her body alone. It was about courage, patience, and trust. She had learned to face fear head-on, to embrace discomfort as part of growth, and to celebrate progress no matter how small. As her walking improved, Emily began experimenting with new movements. She practiced bending, reaching, and balancing, testing the limits of her strength. Each attempt brought new challenges, but also new rewards. She discovered muscles she had forgotten, coordination she thought she had lost, and a resilience that seemed to grow stronger with every effort. Her connection with the mountain man deepened. He taught her more than physical exercises. He taught her mindfulness, awareness, and the art of being present. Emily learned to focus on each step, each breath, each movement, appreciating the small miracles her body was capable of. She realized that healing was not just about walking. It was about embracing life fully with all its challenges and joys. One day, while walking along a narrow forest path, Emily slipped slightly on a patch of moss. Panic surged, but she remembered the man's words. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and continued. The slip could have been a setback, but instead it became a lesson in balance, focus, and persistence. Every fall was temporary, every struggle an opportunity to grow stronger. Weeks passed, and Emily's progress was undeniable. She could now walk confidently for long stretches, climb small hills, and navigate uneven terrain. Her legs were stronger, her balance better, and her confidence soaring. The forest had become her sanctuary, a place where fear transformed into courage, weakness into strength, and doubt into determination. Emily's life outside the forest also began to change. She started venturing into her town, walking short distances without support. People stared in surprise and admiration, many offering words of encouragement. For the first time, Emily felt visible in a world that had once seemed indifferent to her struggles. She realized that her journey was not only about reclaiming her body, it was about reclaiming her presence, her voice, and her spirit. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Emily reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the first day she had arrived in the forest, hesitant and unsure, and compared it to the strength she now felt. The journey had been difficult, filled with doubt, pain, and fear, but it had also been filled with growth, discovery, and triumph. She understood now that healing was a journey, not a destination, and that every small step forward mattered. The mountain man watched her silently, proud but never boastful. He had guided her, but the work had always been hers. Emily realized that true strength came not from someone else pushing her forward, but from her own willingness to face fear, embrace challenge, and persevere. She felt gratitude, not only for him but for the forest, the sunlight, and the life she had reclaimed piece by piece. Emily began setting new goals for herself. She wanted to walk further, climb higher, and regain the independence she had lost. Each goal was a challenge, but she approached it with determination and patience. She celebrated each victory, no matter how small, and used setbacks as lessons rather than failures. Her journey had taught her resilience, and she embraced it fully. As months passed, Emily noticed changes beyond her physical abilities. Her relationships improved, her confidence soared, and her outlook on life shifted. She no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstance, but as a participant in her own story, capable of shaping her destiny. She shared her experiences with others, inspiring friends and strangers alike with her determination, patience, and courage. The mountain man remained a steady presence, guiding her when needed, but allowing her to take ownership of her progress. Emily learned that true mentorship was not about control, but about support, encouragement, and faith in another person's abilities. She felt a deep respect and gratitude for him, understanding that his guidance had been a turning point in her life. One morning, Emily stood at the edge of a hill, the wind brushing her face, her legs steady and strong. She looked out at the vast forest, the sunlight shimmering through the trees, and felt a sense of triumph and peace. She had walked further than she had imagined, climbed higher than she had thought possible, and discovered a strength she had never known. She realized that her journey was far from over, but she was ready. She had learned that setbacks were temporary, progress was possible, and courage was found in persistence. The forest had become more than a place. It was a teacher, a guide, and a witness to her transformation. Emily knew that the lessons she had learned in the forest would carry her forward, not just in walking but in life. She would face challenges with patience, embrace growth with determination, and celebrate every step, knowing that each was a victory. The mountain man had shown her the way, but it was her own courage, resilience, and heart that had carried her forward. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt whole. Her body was stronger, her mind clearer, and her spirit alive. She had walked through fear, pain, and doubt, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. She knew that whatever lay ahead, she could face it, one step at a time, with courage in her heart and the lessons of the forest guiding her way. Emily woke to a soft light spilling through her window, the morning sun casting a warm glow over her room. She felt different today, not just physically stronger, but lighter in spirit, full of a sense of purpose she hadn't known for years. The months she had spent in the forest, learning, practicing, and challenging herself had transformed her. Her legs were strong, her balance steady, and her confidence overflowing. But beyond the physical, something deeper had shifted. She believed in herself. She rolled her wheelchair to the edge of her apartment and paused. For years, this simple act had been a struggle. But now, with careful effort, she stood, testing her balance. Her legs trembled slightly, but she smiled, remembering every lesson from the forest. Slowly, she began to walk toward the door, each step deliberate, each step a victory. She could feel the strength in her muscles, the stability in her core, and the power of her own determination. Once outside, the world seemed brighter than ever. Birds sang, the air was crisp and fresh, and the streets that had once felt so daunting now seemed welcoming. Emily walked confidently, her steps sure, her mind calm. She had reclaimed a part of herself she had thought lost forever. The freedom she felt was intoxicating, not just freedom of movement, but freedom of spirit. She decided to visit the forest one last time before taking her journey further. The trees seemed to recognize her as she approached, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. The mountain man was waiting, as always, his presence calm and steady. He smiled when he saw her walking toward him without support. "You've come far," he said simply, his eyes warm with approval. Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I never thought I'd get here. I thought I'd be trapped forever." He shook his head gently. "You were never trapped, you just needed guidance and patience. Your courage carried you, every step was yours." They walked together along a familiar path, Emily moving with grace and confidence, the man watching her with quiet pride. She practiced movements she had once thought impossible, climbing over small rocks, balancing along uneven trails, and even running short distances. Each action reminded her of how far she had come, how much she had grown, and how capable she truly was. Over the next few days, Emily began sharing her journey with friends and neighbors. She walked into her small town, no longer reliant on her wheelchair, and people were amazed. Some remembered the struggles she had faced, the long months she had spent confined to her apartment. Others had only heard rumors. But now, seeing her walk confidently, they were inspired. Emily's story spread quietly at first, from neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend. People came to her for advice, for encouragement, and for hope. She shared the lessons she had learned in the forest, the importance of patience, determination, and trust in oneself. She explained that healing was a journey, not a destination, and that every small step forward mattered. She also shared the guidance of the mountain man, though he had requested that she not reveal his personal details. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places, she told people. Sometimes guidance comes from those who appear quietly in your life, not to fix you, but to show you what you are capable of. Emily noticed that her influence reached farther than she had imagined. People who had struggled with their own limitations, whether physical, emotional, or mental, found courage in her story. They wrote to her, visited her, or simply listened, inspired by her determination and the visible proof that perseverance could transform life. Meanwhile, Emily continued her daily walks through the forest, savoring every step. Each morning brought new challenges, steeper hills, rougher trails, and unfamiliar terrain, but she embraced them. Her legs were stronger, but it was her mind that had truly transformed. She faced every obstacle with confidence, patience, and focus. Even when she stumbled, she learned from it, understanding that mistakes and setbacks were part of the journey. One crisp autumn morning, as leaves of gold and red carpeted the forest floor, Emily found herself at the top of a hill she had once thought impossible to climb. The view stretched endlessly before her, the town in the distance, the winding river below, and the forest spreading far beyond. She stood there, chest filled with breathless wonder, heart overflowing with gratitude. For years, she had believed this moment unattainable. And now she had arrived. The mountain man stood beside her, silent but supportive. He had guided her patiently, gently, never forcing, always allowing her to grow at her own pace. Emily realized that while he had been a guide, the journey had always belonged to her. Her courage, determination, and faith had carried her every step of the way. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered softly, "I did it. I really did it." He nodded, smiling. "Yes, and now you are ready for the next part of your life. You have discovered what you are capable of. Remember this feeling, this strength, and carry it into everything you do." Emily spent the next few weeks gradually reintegrating into daily life outside the forest. She walked to the local market, visited friends and family, and even attended small community events. Each step brought new confidence. She realized that independence was not just about movement. It was about reclaiming her life, her choices, and her presence in the world. Her family was overwhelmed with joy and pride. They had supported her through the darkest days, and now they could witness the transformation firsthand. Her parents held her hands, tears of happiness in their eyes. "We are so proud of you," her mother whispered. "You've shown us what determination truly means." Emily smiled, feeling warmth and love. She realized that the journey had not only changed her body, but had strengthened the bonds with those she loved. She had learned to ask for help when needed, to appreciate small victories, and to share her strength with others. One day, Emily decided to give back to the community in a more formal way. She began hosting small gatherings in the town library, sharing her story and teaching exercises she had learned in the forest. People of all ages attended, inspired by her courage and the visible proof of transformation. Emily encouraged them to set small goals, to face fears, and to celebrate progress, no matter how minor it seemed. Her sessions became popular. People who had given up hope found courage in her words. Parents brought children who struggled with physical challenges. Elders came to regain mobility and confidence. Emily's influence grew quietly but powerfully, her story spreading like ripples on water, touching lives she had never imagined. Throughout this time, the mountain man remained in the background. He visited occasionally, offering advice and encouragement, but mostly he let Emily take the lead. She realized that mentorship was not about dependence, but about empowerment. He had shown her the way, but it was her own courage and determination that carried her forward. Emily also discovered a new sense of purpose. She began writing a journal, documenting her journey in detail. She included exercises, reflections, and lessons learned. She wanted others to benefit from her experience, to understand that even when life seems impossible, transformation is possible with patience, trust, and perseverance. Her writing eventually evolved into a book, capturing the story of struggle, hope, and triumph. Emily poured her heart into every page, sharing not only the physical challenges she had overcome, but also the emotional and mental journey that had shaped her. She described the forest, the mountain man's guidance, and the small victories that had built her confidence and independence. The book was received warmly. Readers wrote to her, thanking her for sharing her story, for giving them hope. and for inspiring them to face their own obstacles. Emily realized that her journey, once so personal and private, had become a source of encouragement for many. She had transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of those who heard her story. One evening, Emily returned to the forest alone. The air was cool, the leaves rustling gently in the wind. She walked along the familiar path, her steps steady and strong. She paused at the edge of the hill where she had first felt triumph, looking out at the town, the river, and the endless forest beyond. A feeling of peace washed over her. She had faced despair, fear, and doubt, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. She realized that life would always have challenges, but she now had the tools, the courage, and the resilience to face them. She had discovered her own strength, and that knowledge was a gift she would carry forever. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the forest, Emily felt a presence behind her. The mountain man stepped into view, a quiet smile on his face. "You have done well," he said softly. "You have grown stronger than you imagined. Remember, life is a journey, and you now walk it with courage, patience, and wisdom." Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." He nodded and stepped back into the trees, his figure fading into the shadows, leaving Emily standing alone, yet fully empowered. She knew he had always been there to guide her, but the journey and the triumph was hers alone. Emily turned and walked down the path, her steps confident and steady. The forest, the town, her family, and her community, all were part of a life she had reclaimed. She had walked through fear, doubt, and pain and emerged stronger, independent, and filled with hope. And for the first time in years, Emily felt completely alive.